Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending Mayoral Candidates Forum. The purpose of this forum is to give the community an opportunity to ask questions and hear from the candidates on important issues before you cast in your vote. Good afternoon. My name is AIA. I'm the president of AIA Santa Barbara. The forum is the collaboration of AIA Santa Barbara, Downtown Organization of Santa Barbara, Coastal Housing Coalition, APA, American Planning Association of Central Coast. Also, our supporting partners are Santa Barbara Association of Realtors, Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters, LWV, Santa Barbara. Now I would like to recognize and introduce today's event host and the moderator, Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is the president of Santa Barbara Association of Realtors, also managing director of Radius Commercial Real Estate. So Brian, you're on.
Thank you, Ty. Good afternoon and welcome to the Mayoral Candidate Forum. My name is Brian Johnson and I'm serving as moderator this afternoon for our event. Thank you to all of the candidates who agreed to join us today. I'll start by introducing you the way that you're described on the ballot and in alphabetical order. So James Joyce III, small business owner, Matt Kilrain, small business owner, Kathy Murillo, mayor of Santa Barbara, Randy Rouse, downtown business owner, Deborah Schwartz, city planning commissioner, and Mark Whitehurst, publisher. The rules are short today. We'll be asking each candidate a series of questions with the candidate having 1 minute to answer. We will have to interrupt if they exceed that time limit, so please keep your questions condensed. Additionally, we'll ask the candidates to not disparage each other in any of their responses. We will be rotating the order in which the candidates will answer. And at the end of today's event, each candidate will receive 2 minutes to give a brief ending statement to appeal to the voters. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick it off. And Mayor Murillo, I'll start with you for the first question. This is a little bit of a TBD that we had on the list, but it is hard for any one person to be sufficiently knowledgeable to govern our city. Please give an example of one area where you excel and one area where you strive to improve in making critical decisions in governing our city.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for putting together this event. I was a news reporter before I was elected to public service, and I covered housing and homelessness. So when I came to the city council, I already had a broad knowledge of those issues. I knew a lot of people in town. I know a lot of our unsheltered folks. And I'm forgetting the second part of your question, but I guess I would just emphasize the experience I have and the passion that I have for public service and serving the city of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy, just to reiterate, give us an example of one area where you excel and one area where you strive to improve in making critical decisions in governing the city.
Yeah, thank you. I think what I bring to the city is broad experience of both private business and public experience in terms of city government. And I think what I would excel in is the ability to bring people together in a reasonable way and try to end some of the rancor and some of the divisiveness that's already on council. I think that what's happened now is that the lack of communication has really cost some pace and some ability to reform and improve our city. So I think that's what I would do, and I would reach out to the different departments and see exactly what their input is and see what their perspective is, and that's where I would try to improve my perspective, is to get the input from them.
Thank you. James.
Excellent. Thank you for that question, Brian, and thanks for moderating us this evening. I think one area where I would excel is in community outreach. That's similar to as Mayor Murillo had mentioned, the journalistic background. You know, as an award-winning journalist, it's really the job to go in and learn really quickly what an issue is. And having done that for a decade and then done public service on the back end for a decade, that's what I've done. And so I've have a general knowledge of a lot of the issues. And then rely on the experts to dive deeper. And so that's one area. But I think one area that we can definitely improve and an area that I could help bring that is in communication with our community.
Thank you. Deborah.
Well, effective local government requires effective preparation and meeting facilitation. I've demonstrated that on Planning Commission. This is my 12th and last year, and I've been chair 3 times. Cooperative, collegial, and decisive facilitation with council colleagues is essential. I think that the public at large has not understood the differing roles and authority between Planning Commission and council. And now is the time to help the community understand and require that mayor and council exert their authority as policymakers, directing the technical staff to follow their lead, not the other way.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kilrain.
Okay, first of all, the majority of the city's already behind my agenda. I'll be implementing my agenda from the beginning. There's 4 cornerstones and several amendments to my agenda. The primary purpose of my agenda is to stop the divide and to raise the vibe and to unite the 805. Now, this is stuff that I'm really, really good at. I'm totally capable of uniting all the vaccinated and all the unvaccinated people behind my agenda. Pretty much the majority of the entire Santa Barbara population already knows my agenda and they're behind my agenda. And the majority of the citizens want to divide. They want to stop all this division and hatred and anger. If I said the majority of the citizens want to divide, I meant to say they want to unite. They oppose the division. And this is what I will be able to do. I have a lot of experience at this. I have a lot of experience at getting rid of tyrants and gang stalkers. And when we get rid of more of them, it'll open up a lot of housing for the young people.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mark.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I think a strength that I would bring to the city would be marketing. I have had 3 successful startups as a business person over the last 38 years. And each one of those experiences of the startup required creativity, decisiveness, good financial grounding, and relationship building. In the city, I've been involved with the downtown organization for 14 years as its president and part of the chair of the marketing committee. I was on the founding group that put together First Thursday. And I think that's the sort of the promotion that the city needs. And I think that's the strength I would bring. What I would need to work on, I think, would be mediation. I think that mediating the different issues throughout the city is something that's always needs extra effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next question. It's a little bit of a long one, so if anyone needs me to repeat anything, just let me know. We'll start with you, Randy, on this one. We continually hear about the housing crisis in our state and across the country, especially in realizing middle and low-income housing. What do you think are the top 3 issues that are preventing Santa Barbara from realizing this type of housing? And what specific idea or plan would you put forward to the council and community to solve this problem?
Okay, well, the 3 top issues are: number 1, scarcity of vacant land in a built-out city. Number 2 is repeated failed attempts to create new housing from the dais as opposed to out of the field. And number 3 is onerous and uncertain permitting systems that need to be resolved. I would go to the private sector and the groups that actually build projects in the first place and find out what are the holdups, what are the problems. I wouldn't try to create it in the ordinance committee. We have a lot of housing that's out there on the block ready to be built, and yet these projects aren't coming up out of the ground. Almost 1,000 units. And I wonder, well, why are we talking about other things when these things are not coming out of the ground? It might be something systemic. It might be something financial. We should find that out before we go and try to make some new set of ordinances that's going to somehow magically make housing appear.
Thank you. Mr. Joyce.
Great, thank you. So I agree. You know, there's been a lot of chatter and talk about the housing crisis, and it's not been a new conversation. It's been a conversation for decades. And so I think for Santa Barbara specifically, top 3 issues are 1, 2, and 3, funding for the Housing Authority. We know they do a great job, and we're not gonna just fully build our way out of this problem. But we know that the missing middle is where we have to grow in our housing, right? And so one idea, missing middle, is the workforce housing, right? And so one idea that I've shared in the past is this idea of at the Armory site on the east side, right? And mitigating that location in order to be able to build first of its kind staff and teacher housing, right? Working with the school district to be able to do that, and then also providing educational support locations so mixed use, right? And so being able to provide gallery space, childcare for employees, that kind of thing in a space like that, right in a corridor that is already an educational corridor. And so that solves several of our problems at once, and that's kind of the approach that I've looked to take. How many issues can we tackle with each project?
Thank you. Deborah.
Well, we need to ask ourselves what our responsibility is as a city and as city government. Last summer, the mayor and council received a report from a publicly funded consultant that identified 31 recommended changes in our community development department. To date, unfortunately, very few of those 31 have been implemented. So we have a ways to go in terms of improving our internal process, which is within our control. 90% of all of the rental housing in the city of Santa Barbara has been constructed by the private sector. That means the Housing Authority has a small percentage of that role. The private sector has the financing to acquire and develop and pay property tax, much needed, into our general fund, whereas the Housing Authority does not pay property tax as a nonprofit housing developer. Public-private partnerships are the way to go, with the private sector making the significant investment, owning the land, paying the taxes, and bringing the Housing Authority along. But that requires vision and political will that we have not seen to date.
Okay, thank you. Matt, your thoughts?
Okay, first of all, I oppose the growth, or excuse me, I support growth restrictions, and I oppose the state and the county trying to mandate the city take on all these new people that aren't even here yet. Especially during the pandemic, I think we need to stop bringing in new people. No more new people until the pandemic is over. Okay, now the people we have, I'm starting to agree with the stack and pack housing for the city workforce. I'm thinking James's idea with the Armory and perhaps the Sears building is a good idea to put in all the stack and pack city workers that we can fit. We'll give them built-in 5G, built-in LED lighting. If they're vaccinated and they wear a mask, we'll lower the rent to next to nothing. Now, this is going to open up a lot of housing for the new families that need to go ahead and fall in love with each other and probably start having babies during the pandemic, because it's ludicrous to start thinking about making money during the pandemic. We're on the brink of war, and we're all worried about building houses for the refugees that come up here from LA when the earthquake knocks down the ghetto. That's not what we need in Santa Barbara. We need to take care of who we got. We'll take the teachers and the city workers, stack and pack them, and give the young folks the housing that the city workers don't want.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Mayor Murillo?
Thank you. I believe that housing is a basic human right, and that has always been a tenet of my public service. The three main obstacles to building new housing are high land values, lack of subsidies for low income or middle income housing, and then resistance from the community. Either people stereotype low income families, that creates opposition, or property owners nearby, they just don't want more people or traffic in their neighborhood. So when you have housing, you have to improve transportation too, so that you don't jam up the neighborhood with more cars. We are defining and redefining our dense housing program. We're working on the floor area ratio program. We're refining our multifamily housing guidelines and our objective design standards. So we are working on making housing more doable. I'll be working with the new planning director to streamline the application and design review process. Yes, we do need to implement more of the NOVAC report recommendations, but I need help from everyone who's tuned in today, the Housing Coalition. We need to have political courage to say yes to housing in the right locations, well designed, and we need support when we're making those decisions.
Thank you. And Mark, I apologize, I skipped you there. I'll make it up to you, I promise.
No problem. The three that I would select would be permitting. That process is holding up everything. And the second would be the attitude in the city of partnering or not partnering or supporting those that are for no growth, or those are no growth and those who are for growth. I think that that's a major issue. And then I would say the market forces hold this back, you know, the process. And but I believe those are the three main issues. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next question. There are many examples of average unit density housing projects having to go through an inefficient and costly process. One project went through 14 separate hearings and had to sacrifice almost 20% of their units before achieving approval. What specifically would you do to change and correct this problem? And we'll start with James today.
Great, thank you, Brian. So I guess I would start by redefining that question a little bit. I see it less of a sacrifice and more of an opportunity to invest in the community with the 20% inclusionary, right? And so, you know, I do feel as if the AUD is kind of a failed experiment. You know, it hasn't led to cheaper housing. Costs have gone up. I can attest to that. I do think that there's, you know, some permitting things that need to be made cleaner, some things that need to be easier to navigate for folks. But I think we should first focus on the homeowners and the commercial spaces, right? And before I'm starting to worry about, you know, a program that's going to help out developers, there's going to be a program that's going to be helpful for the folks that live here, that struggle to live here like myself, right? And so I'm open to the idea of, you know, and I've discussed this idea of coupling temporary higher inclusionary percentages with permitting and fee incentives, maybe a 5 to 7 year term phase, and then phase out the incentives and lower the inclusionary rate required to build, right? And that's an innovative way to encourage more units being built. In a period. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Deborah, your thoughts?
Well, voters across the city, both residents and business owners, have told me of their personal stories regarding their attempts to seek permits on a variety of housing-related renovation needs, whether it's a small single-story home or, in this case, multi-unit. And time and again, I hear from them, and these are the core issues of an unclear process, an inconsistent process, and in some cases, what feels like a biased process. So I come back to what is within our control, and that is process in the city. We have to have the dedication, the political courage, and the commitment to truly look inside our own house for improvements. Separate from that, we need to ask ourselves, housing for whom? We talk about the missing middle, we talk about workforce families, and we also have not talked about student housing, which is creating significant pressures throughout our community. We need to partner with those institutions.
Thank you. Okay, Matt?
Okay, following up on Deborah's remarks, housing for who? That's correct. Our big problem is housing people that don't even live in Santa Barbara. That's what we're all worried about, is housing all these people that are somewhere else. All these homeless people, all these refugees, all these people with their problems, somewhere in California, somewhere in the United States, somewhere in the world. We need to bring all them here to Santa Barbara and stack and pack them in and get them paying taxes. That's what all you guys want, okay? We got to stop this mentality. Santa Barbara has limited resources. You can't even crank clean sewage into the ocean. You guys are polluting the ocean and the air so bad that it's just repulsive what we're doing to Santa Barbara with this idea of bringing in thousands and thousands of more people. Oh, let's worry about the people that are somewhere else. I got a better idea. Let's worry about the people that are here in Santa Barbara, and most of the people are already housed. Yeah, they're paying a little bit too much rent, but when I raise their incomes by a lot, they're going to be able to afford the high rent. And by the way, when the citizens become owners of the business of Santa Barbara, that's going to jack up their incomes by a whole lot. And
Okay,
then,
Matt. Yep, we got to stop you there. We got to keep on track. Mark?
Yes, when you talk about process, I think you have to go straight to the Novak study because it detailed a whole line of what needed to be done in the community development department to streamline the process so that it's not like what you just described. The second thing is, in this process are the committees. And I believe that we need to take a very close look at committee members that abuse their discretion. And I think that's what's causing these repeat meetings is abuse of discretion, and that these committee members either need to be retrained or relieved. And I just think that's essential to the process. And then the next thing, the last would be a timeline. There needs to be something very definite people can look at and say, if I apply for this, I'm not going to have to wait 3 years to get an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy?
This is a really good question. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So the AUD program gave us a lot of housing. And I think we were all surprised when a lot of it came in market rate. But I do have to say that the Housing Authority was able to use the AUD formulas to create capital A affordable. The People's Self-Help Housing Project on Haley and Salsaquetas. That was an AUD project, but so was the Mark, right? Which came in as a luxury complex with a swimming pool. But even the Mark, 40 years from now, will have some wear and tear on it, and it'll be blending into our rental housing stock. We haven't been building rental housing until we had AUD. So there's some benefit there. To get to your question, the project that you talk about, if there were 14 passes in design review, either the design review board was being overreaching or the project had problems. We just kind of have to be honest sometimes about some of the projects needing more review
Okay.
than others.
Okay.
But we need to make a commitment to dense housing production because that's where we're going to get our housing production. Thank you.
I've got to stop you there. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. Randy?
So this isn't that complicated. We need to reform the intake process, a little bit what Mark was referring to. when a project goes in, no matter what the project, AUD or otherwise, the developer and the business and the building department have to get together beforehand and just determine what the timeline is going to be and have some certainty in the process. There should be a template with due dates, with fees, and those fees and those due dates should match up. The discretionary design review boards need to be taken a look at in terms of their scope. There should be a limited number of bites at the apple if the project is substantially conforming with what was put in there in the first place. So when you input a project, you should have a due date that is reliable so that if you are either building a project or getting capital investment for a project, you know exactly what you're talking about. This would be something that we could do tomorrow, and it really needs to start happening, but it takes both sides. The architects and developers have to be ready to go with their full thing, and the department has to be willing to accept it.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Deborah, we'll start with you for this question. What would you do to support the city's participation in private-public partnerships to make use of ground-level parking lots, garages, and other city-owned properties, such as Paseo Nuevo, to increase housing downtown and throughout the community?
Well, I've heard from voters far and wide that they expect our city leadership to be more strategic, to have vision, and to be conveners in public-private partnership opportunities. But that requires strategic planning that is not coming out of our city leadership today. That is a strength of my background. And we don't have a strategically identified inventory of all of our public properties that have potential for appropriate and sensitive redevelopment. I would start with that, and I would lead that effort.
Thank you. All right. Matt, your thoughts?
Okay, I don't know if you've been able to pick up on it or not, but I'm not trying to grow Santa Barbara at this point. You guys are aware of that, right? Now, Paseo Nuevo and all this stuff, we only have less than 1,000 people that are homeless, and most of them want to be that way, okay? But even if you took all 1,000 of them, you could fit all 1,000 of them in one building, but they don't even want to be there, okay? So we're making this housing issue because we all want to make money. And I'm in the real estate business also. I'm a real estate major at Santa Barbara City College, and I made A's, by the way. And I'm really good at property management, and I'm really good at analyzing the highest and best use for a property. And Paseo Nuevo, the highest and best use is not residential. I can assure you of that. Now, I'm telling you, folks, we have enough residents in Santa Barbara now. We don't need that much new housing to house the people. They're already housed. We got less than 1,000 people that are not housed. And I can get rid of 1,000 tyrants and criminals and predators. And when they give up the housing where they're at, when the tyrants and criminals and predators leave town, it'll open up housing for the good people.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Mark, your thoughts?
I think we should. I would advocate for state funding. Anything that we could use in the way of state funding for these projects, like is currently on the table, we should take advantage of that. As far as the Paseo Nuevo goes, there's a lease involved, and I think currently they're wanting to extend it, and that's key to financing. They have to have a long lease in order to get the right kind of financing. I think the city should extend that lease, and they should rewrite it and ask for housing to be a part of the mix in the Paseo Nuevo, and that they should grant that extension based on that. And then also, I think that we should look at this private combination, private parties together with the city to do projects and expand that idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Kathy.
Yeah.
Sure. I had to put my microphone on, thanks.
Sure.
So yes, the city has parking lots and parking structures downtown, and people want us to build housing on them for themselves, but we could use some of the parking lots for housing that's built downtown. We've already made that decision. The downtown parking committee said okay, as that would support housing, which would revitalize downtown and just generally boost our economy. So we have already decoupled parking requirements from building projects. So a parking spot won't necessarily come with a housing unit. And already there's private properties downtown where people lease parking spaces. So we already have an example of that working. Paseo Nuevo, that's a great idea actually, to ask them for parking for new housing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Randy?
Parking can't be completely discounted because as we found out, no matter what we build, there's going to be market forces involved. And a lot of those folks are going to need to get to Goleta or Carpentry or wherever the work happens to be. So parking still needs to be a part of the mix. Certainly during the charrette, we talked about podium parking. Denny Parker talked about that, being able to do those kind of things. And I can see a cooperative thing with the development that could potentially do that. But as we go through, we make all these different kinds of machinations like AUD or FARs or whatever. At the end of the day, there's no place where density has ensured that the market forces still won't make the prices higher than what we think there should be. So the models haven't worked out yet. So I'm a little concerned about not involving the private sector in these conversations and trying to do it from a policy standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. And James, would you like to bring us home on this one?
Sure, thank you. I think in my view of a desired public-private partnership that the city could support would be to provide more housing, would be to look and to work with our local employers, our local companies that have told me that they're having challenges recruiting and retaining employees locally because of the high cost of housing, right? And so bringing them to the table to provide some resources for the needed resources that are needed for their employee base, right? And there's some innovative housing solutions that we can find in there, both through new projects and adaptive reuse of some of our big box spaces. But more specifically, I do not support public funds going to private developers per se to create housing solutions that we've seen that they haven't worked. I mean, you've heard several of those projects mentioned here this evening. And so I'm open to new and creative ways to build more housing. Paseo Nuevo definitely has some opportunities there, the Nordstrom space as well, but we need to do it in a smart and strategic way. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Matt, we'll start with you for this question. Santa Barbara has had a 60-foot height limit for commercially zoned properties since 1930, yet few buildings have been allowed to be built to that height. What is your position on allowing proposed housing developments of 4 to 5 stories up to 60 feet in height by right without special findings?
I oppose it.
Okay. Easy enough. All right. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, if you show me a location that doesn't block the ocean, has great setbacks, and doesn't canyonize downtown, I would be totally for it. And I think that we have to be creative and putting limits on that creativity in terms of heights, even though they're an important consideration in every neighborhood and throughout the city. I would be very open and supportive of a good project that needed that height.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
I remember the Building Heights Initiative of 2009, Measure B, and it failed. It was an attempt to bring the limit down to 40 feet downtown, 45 feet everywhere else. And the people said no. I looked it up today. It was 54% saying no. I thank the AIA for helping bring awareness on that particular initiative. You know, it was a few years ago, but it did demonstrate support for well-designed, well-located buildings with some height, mainly because they would provide much needed housing. There's some California laws allowing taller buildings, especially if they're housing the homeless. And if you look at the Sanctuary Center project, it's located inside the block. So it's not on the, right against the curb where it towers over the street. It's got a perfect location. It's 5 stories. It's well designed. So yes, I would support it. It has to look right and be in the right location. But providing housing for our unsheltered people, or in the case of Sanctuary Center, mental health clinic and other services for distressed people, that's a community benefit.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Well, the way the code now reads, you can build up to 60 feet for community priorities, the findings you referred to in the question. But Santa Barbara has an aesthetic that needs to be preserved. The Milpas corridor is one of the great examples. If you build it, you can make a very big canyon along the Milpas corridor. At one time, that was all zoned at 60 feet. And that would be a tragedy because you lose those Riviera skylines. We have a quality of life here that needs to be preserved. We would become Santa Monica really quickly. And I don't think we want to live in Santa Monica. I think this wants to be Santa Barbara. So no, I wouldn't willy-nilly just approve something or go without a referendum to people and say, what is it you'd really like to do here? Because I think now, if we build all these things, what we've seen with every project we built is we still have not discovered affordability. So would we trash Santa Barbara and then still not have it be affordable? Right now, that seems to be the pattern we follow. So I would say I would be opposed to that.
Okay, thank you. And James?
You've heard me reference adaptive reuse earlier, and I think that we have so many opportunities to do that, right? And I'd prefer to explore all of those opportunities first. But generally, I'm supportive of providing the surrounding community an appropriate opportunity to raise grievances with a project. There's a variety of reasons for that, and I'm supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah, to wrap it up.
Thank you. In the 10 months I've been running for mayor and talking with community members throughout the 6 districts, I've been hearing that height is not the #1 priority concern. Everybody wants to preserve the scale and charm of the Santa Barbara we love, and as my hometown, I'm right there with them. So the question is, how do we bring the diverse opinions together in a community forum that allows for the differing views so that we can forge consensus on our zoning and our development standards? We've not done that. We haven't had that kind of leadership and convening coming out of City Hall in a while. And I would make that a priority for myself. We have to, in fact, bring the community together as opposed to separate the community with those who have differing views about the zoning development standards. And this is essential before the state enacts more legislation that removes a lot of that local control.
Thank you. Mark, we'll start with you on this question. How do you envision increasing Santa Barbara's economic vitality via your role on the council? What specific actions would you take to support these efforts?
I would reinforce, expand, and promote 2 of Santa Barbara's greatest treasures. The first one would be art and culture, and the second would be its ecological environment. Both of these are clean industries that have a lot of gravitas, and they're loved by the community themselves. So as you expand this idea of vitality and include the community, the locals in this economic revival, along with the visitors, these 2 economic engines not only will be enjoyed, but they will bring greater revenues to our city, and it would be green and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy, your thoughts on that?
Thanks so much. We hired an economic development manager, which was one of the suggestions that came out of a prior consulting report or suggestions from the business community. And he's developed an economic development plan. We've approved it. It focuses on helping businesses citywide through business districts, revitalizing downtown, and making the city more business friendly. So all of that needs to be implemented in the next 3 years. That would be a focus of my second term. We need to do more business recruitment. We need to maintain the beauty and welcoming nature of the city because we do rely on tourism, heritage tourism, but we do need to diversify the economy. I serve as the liaison to downtown Santa Barbara. So I believe marketing of events downtown, bringing people downtown, bringing foot trafficking and activity will be the foundation of success, but really making the city more business friendly. And there's a whole lot of strategies in there, and we'll make this city what it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy.
Job one would be to thoroughly clean State Street and the side streets. Right now, it's gotten to a point where it's absolutely unwelcoming to be down there. We don't look like we're ready for business. We don't look like we're open for business. And the second thing I would do is to light both those areas, including the paseos, and make it warm, inviting, clean, and vibrant. I have a lot of landlords who say they've got tenants on the cusp of signing leases that they really can't bring home because it doesn't look like we're very serious about being open for business. So that would be the first things I would do. And then, of course, we go back to reforming the permit process so that when tenants come in to have their TIs in front of the counter, they can get a lot of stuff done ministerially instead of going through some onerous and extended process. And lastly, when we make it clean and light, we're going to invite the rest of our locals and our tourists back downtown. Because right now, that's what we're hearing about, and we can fix that.
Thank you. James.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. I think the role of the mayor in this situation is as the chief advocate for the city, right? And in being the chief advocate, I would share the work that I've already done in this space, right? In my work with State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson years ago, we started a Jobs and Economic Development Initiative, right? And through that, we got many of our things, 805 Connect, our Impact Hub, Kiva Co-work now, the Sandbox. Some of these places came out of conversations like that, right? And so being able to share that uniquely Santa Barbara story outside of Santa Barbara and recruit the kinds of businesses that we want to have here in Santa Barbara. And when I say what kinds of businesses, such as B Corps, we've got a great B Corp classification in the state of California. It's a social benefit corporation. Those are the kinds of companies that we want here in Santa Barbara. And so working with the business organizations and the local companies that we already have here to do that exterior outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah.
Here again, the question is economic vitality for whom? Yesterday, in an interview that I had with El Latino newspaper, we discussed the concerns from some communities as to their views of whether or not they feel economically left behind. Our new economic development plan for the city, in my view, is not a whole city balanced plan. And I expressed this when it came to Planning Commission. So I would look to bring this plan back because if the entire city and every neighborhood and every district doesn't have equal participation in the economic well-being of our city, I think our city has failed. But we can work towards that kind of balance and equality that I think should be the hallmark of Santa Barbara. And I think that's what our community members expect of a mayor.
Thank you. And Matt, your thoughts?
Okay, the Keystone Amendment to my four cornerstone agenda will make the citizens of Santa Barbara owners of the business of Santa Barbara. And this will raise their income by owning the business of Santa Barbara. Now, the third cornerstone of my four cornerstone agenda is to make Santa Barbara the green power capital of the world. And within this third cornerstone, after we implement the Keystone Amendment and make the citizens owners of the business, I will give the citizens of Santa Barbara more than $1 billion of green technology in which we will be using the ocean to clean the air. And we'll be selling this technology all around the world. And this is going to be good for our economic situation in Santa Barbara. It's going to raise, if you were to figure, right now, the city of Santa Barbara might make $500 a year profit at the most. Is that a cutoff?
Yeah, unfortunately, we gotta stop you there. Thank you, though. Okay, moving on to the next question. Mayor Murillo, we'll start back at the top with you. What is your vision for State Street and the downtown central business district, both in the immediate term and the longer term?
So our city, our downtown rather, is undergoing a transition from a retail focus to a mixed use focus that includes the kind of retail people want. Retail isn't dead, it's transitioning too. We need housing downtown. We need the kinds of uses that more residential land use brings. So we'll have bodegas, dental offices, and we need to bring different kinds of uses to empty storefronts. So my vision is for a vibrant, bustling downtown with the State Street Promenade still closed to car traffic, continuing as a hub of socializing and entertainment and concerts, fitness, games. And I'm really committed to making it a fun and affordable family-focused area. The Funk Zone has its own charm, but we need families downtown. And I want to create a stormwater assessment district downtown on State Street. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Randy, your thoughts.
So the mayor's right. We are in the middle of a transition right now, but what I would see is going forward is to have maybe even people from the AIA help design some parklets that can be uniform, but be right sized as they were intended in the first place, that can be taken ministerially over the counter without any design review if you choose to do that way. And then we would have a bike lane in the middle of the street, or not in the middle of the street, but on one side, providing enough room for an electric shuttle to provide the linear transit up and down the street, and perhaps replace the flower pots with some retractable bollards so that public safety can access the entire street. Deliveries can happen in the morning in retail, and that, who knows, maybe even someday a parade again. So I see us trying to enhance this promenade idea moving forward, but it's going to be an evolution. It's going to take some time. And I don't want to step on the advisory committee's work, but I think that's the way I would see at least a start of how we could process this.
Thank you. James.
Indeed, thank you. You know, there's a lot of the vision for State Street that exists elsewhere already. And I think we can utilize some examples elsewhere around the country and globe to work for us specifically here in Santa Barbara. I was glad to hear Mr. Rouse mention the idea of a trolley or electric shuttle down the middle to kind of start to address the issue of the flow of people and the flow of traffic in that corridor now that it's just pedestrian, and I'm in favor of keeping it that way. And then, so for the long term, envisioning a pedestrian corridor similar to that of a Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, or Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, both of those having a healthy mix of both restaurants, retail, but experiential retail. That's the transition that retail is going through, experiential retail, but making sure that there's also a very healthy dose of arts and culture in there as well, to make sure that we're enhancing the flow of people through the corridor. How do you create some of that vitality is I've floated the idea of a vacancy tax. If a storefront is empty for too long, 365 days sounds like a good number, then a vacancy tax would kick in either to incentivize filling that, to be able to not lose revenue but gain revenue, and also to fill that space. But I'm in favor of a community process to get us there. I'm a fan of a phased approach for any new requirements.
I've got to cut you off.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, Deborah.
So in 2019, the council commissioned a publicly funded report from the Cosmont companies, which brought forward the numerous vulnerabilities that we face downtown, evaluating our conditions against many other cities that had already faced our economic threats and had moved successfully through that and to a brighter future. So I question what we've done with that report. It seems that it's sitting on the shelf gathering some dust. At the same time, the local chapter of American Institutes of Architects surveyed upwards of 4,000 community members. We have that feedback. I think what the community is urgently asking for is that they formulate the vision for our city, not a mayor, not simply an elected body of officials. And that's what I would champion, is bringing this back to the community's will, the community's vision. It's not that it needs to be the opinion of a mayor or the elected body. And so I think it needs to be a whole city conversation to bring forward all of the information we have.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt, your thoughts?
Okay, like I've been trying to explain the whole time, we're still in the midst of this pandemic, okay? So in the short term, I think we need to leave State Street the way it is and just deal with what we got and get through this winter. Now, short term still probably means the next year or two, but looking at it long term and looking at our history, which James makes fun of my horse going up and down State Street. But if you look at making money, which is all you guys are so interested in doing, is making money. And if you look at the biggest money making day of the year, it's when we have thousands of horses going up State Street during the fiesta. I've seen more, I probably see on average fiesta horse parade, 100,000, close to 150,000 people on State Street watching your average fiesta horse parade. I don't think.
Thank you. I think we get the idea. Fiesta being important. Agreed. A lot of history there.
And horses.
Mark.
Yes, in the immediate, I see the accommodation of parades, and I also see the accommodation of parklets, and also easy access and open access for everyone, and also accommodate all of the transportation things that we need to move us up and down. In the long term, I see a State Street that is filled with art, is open, is green, and it accentuates our architecture. We really have a beautiful city that's romantic. For it to become too busy, with things that we can't see the larger picture of the city. I think in the long run, we need to be looking at that element. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Randy, this next question will start with you. The state legislature has approved many new laws, including SB 9 and SB 10, to increase density and expedite housing projects to address the housing crisis. Are you willing to embrace these new laws, or are you willing to use city resources to oppose them? And if so, why?
So Santa Barbara has a tremendous legacy of careful planning and design. And CEQA was designed when it was originally done in the Reagan administration, I believe, to make sure we protected our quality of life. And all that's being suddenly swept away for this, I think, a ham-fisted, top-down government move from Sacramento to provide this greater density. And this greater density, once again, when has it actually proved to be more affordable? And it actually hasn't anywhere that I've seen. So yes, I would consider joining with other agencies. I would certainly work with my other mayors. I've already talked to Senator Lamone. She's very aware of my feelings about this. I would take my time and go to Sacramento and see if I could stand up for our community. I don't believe this is where we want to go. Certainly, as I canvassed all, as my fellow opponents have, the people are not very, very happy about the entire idea of going first. And it's going to be the low income and middle income neighborhoods that get sacrificed first.
Thank you. James.
Thank you, Brian. This one's right up my alley because I having worked in the state legislature for the past decade, I think one of the things that our city absolutely needs to do, as you heard Mr. Rouse point out, we have a very unique and special city, which requires that we would need to be more proactive in the legislative process, and as opposed to being reactive after legislation has already become law. And so there's many opportunities for us to be more proactive on the front end. I would prefer to utilize any resources that the city has to be that more proactive outreach, specifically with our state and federal elected officials, and making that presence known ourselves in Sacramento, because we understand how the legislature, or I understand how the legislature is largely dominated by Northern California, LA, San Francisco, Oakland area, and then LA area. And so we need to make our voices heard up in Sacramento.
Thank you. Deborah.
When the governor signed Senate Bills 8, 9, and 10, I reached out to the legislators who sponsored each of these pieces of legislation, and I asked specifically if a mayor of Santa Barbara had reached out to them early on for discussion and possible negotiation of some of the language in the bills, would that have made a difference? And they said, yes. This has not been the pattern in the city of Santa Barbara. Our city has relied on the League of California Cities to be the advocates or the lobbying arm, and that has not been effective. So as mayor, should I earn the voters' confidence, I would lead a proactive legislative effort along with the 3 council members who are currently assigned the legislative committee to begin building those relationships. Without the relationships, there is no access, and without access, there is no influence. So on Senate Bill 9, a little news flash for everyone. It is coming to the Planning Commission next Thursday. City staff has done an analysis of the properties in the city that qualify under Senate Bill 9, and a draft set of ordinance amendments will be in a public hearing next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt.
Okay, I don't know if you guys have been following all the other forums, but if you have, you're probably aware that I resist and resent the county and the state forcing their agendas upon the citizens of Santa Barbara. Now I'm trying to deal with this stack and pack housing initiative that they're forcing down our throats. And as I stated earlier, I'm starting to approve of stacking and packing our city employees. As many of them as we can stack and pack together, the better. The more they'll crowd themselves, the lower their rent will be. And the more vaccinated they are, we'll even lower their rent even more. But what I'm trying to say is that though I oppose stack and pack housing, if you guys like it, you can have it. Like I oppose the vaccine, but if you like it, you can have it. You guys can all vaccinate yourselves and stack and pack yourselves together, but leave our kids out of it.
Thank you. Mark.
I think we should run with the best aspects of these 2 new laws, 9 and 10. And the parts that don't work for our city, we should take our resources and oppose them. And we have those resources: historic, fire, coastal. There's a number of considerations that will impede the use of all of 9 and 10. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy.
So our city did send a letter of opposition on SB 9 based on the need for local control. We prioritize that. And it was prudent for staff to do an analysis of where SB 9 would be applied. I look forward to that report, but I would say too that a credible a consultant's report looked statewide, and only 5.4% of all the properties statewide would actually work for SB 9. So if someone has lived on the property for 3 years, that unit cannot be demolished. And there's exemptions for high fire, for flooding, flood zones, and also for historic resources, which is really important to our city. So I appreciate the effort to create more housing. This did seem very extreme, but we do need more housing, and we need to do it the right way.
Thank you. Now, serving on the council is a very time-consuming role. How would this role fit into your life as more than a full-time job without a full-time salary? And how would you handle the workload and balance your other responsibilities? And James, we'll start with you.
I've been working for the state legislature for the past 10 years. I've been training for the past decade for this. If you don't think working for as district director for State Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson is more than a full-time job, let me tell you, it's a heavy lift. So I do have the experience in doing that. That's just kind of something that's always been part of my character, to be able to juggle multiple things, but at a high capacity. So that just comes naturally. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Deborah, your thoughts?
Well, over the past 12 years, and again, I'm in my last year as a planning commissioner, I've demonstrated my tireless dedication to preparing and being present and productively cooperative with my colleagues throughout. And let me say, for $50 a meeting, I'm probably the least paid in the city for the number of hours that I am dedicating to the work. So my pledge to the voters is to be that dedicated public servant, no matter the hours that it will take, and it will be my full-time job. I appreciate that my family life is such that I have a supportive partner who can help balance the finances along with the emotional support that's required in being a public servant. So with that, I would just be so honored to earn the support of the voters, and would be happy to serve come January.
Thank you. And Matt, how about you?
Yes, all of my life I've owned several businesses at a time all of my life. Been a single parent all of my life, handling several businesses at a time. Usually I got 5 or 10 cars and 5 and 10 boats at a time, 2 or 3 houses, bunches of homes. I don't even know how many responsibilities I have at a time. Always, on any given day, I handle more responsibilities than just about anybody. My parental responsibilities come first. I'm really good at getting rid of tyrants and gang stalkers. I'm good at getting rid of predators and criminals. I do this on the side without getting paid. As a matter of fact, I've never even had a paycheck in my entire life. Now, I do have a small car wash gig that I still keep going for therapy. I wash cars for people here in Montecito because it's kind of like therapy to me. But I don't think the people have a problem if I need to run to town and they got to have a dirty car. They'll be okay with it.
Certainly. Mark, how about you?
I would shift my responsibilities at my business, and I would hire extra help. But I would also relieve myself of some of my nonprofit commitments. And I would find time to do whatever the job required. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Murillo, you might have a little experience in that.
Yes, this is my only job and my only income. I perform the duties of mayor as a full-time job and plus, and I'm known for always attending as many events as I can, large and small, pandemic conditions allowing, of course. But so I make $65,000 a year, and the council members make about $45,000 a year. So Mr. Johnson, no offense, I just have to question how whoever formulated this question, if you don't think $65,000 a year is a living wage, it is, right? And then I would say there's a lot of people in the city of Santa Barbara who don't make that much. And so that's why let's focus again on housing production and affordable housing production, because there are so many people that are raising their families in 2-bedroom apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, our immigrant population, single moms. And so let's recalibrate how we think about wages and housing in the city of Santa Barbara. And I hope I'm not being rude. I'm just saying that there are people who make a lot less money than I do, and we need to take care of them in the city of Santa Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you. Randy?
Well, some folks may recall I had a small business while I was on council, and that business was open 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, and had over 50 employees. So I still managed to do my council work. I managed to do constituent service. I managed to go outside of City Hall and meet with people on request and be responsive. And I think that was my job. So I don't find this a particularly big challenge now that I'd be down to one job. So I think I could organize it, but I do say that the constituents do deserve us to be out of City Hall and being out in the city and being seen and being responsive outside of whatever district you might be assigned to, and certainly as the mayor at large.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one more question. So Deborah, we'll start with you. How would you respond to those who do not want to see greater density and new construction for housing?
Well, as I mentioned, community members throughout the 6 districts have told me that they all appreciate the scale and charm of Santa Barbara. But Santa Barbara has to work for everyone, and that requires communication and compromise and consensus. And I believe that the mayor has the unique responsibility of being a convener of that outreach and feedback to City Hall on how are we going to forge the consensus. The consensus, though, has to start first between mayor and council, as I've been mentioning in these forums. And then we need to go out into the community and respectfully seek that input, which is why I've announced a weekly neighborhood office hours to hear directly from those in the neighborhoods throughout the 6 districts, as opposed to requiring them to come down to City Hall, which will once again be an obligation when we come out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Matt, on to you.
Well, I will embrace anybody that opposes any of these stack and pack housing or increasing density. If you oppose increasing density and you oppose stack and pack housing, I love you. I do not want to see Santa Barbara growing into some giant city. As a matter of fact, I'd like to reduce the population down to about 90,000. I think it might be about 92 or 93,000 now. There's probably about 2 or 3,000 criminals and predators and gang stalkers and tyrants that we should run out of town immediately, which will open up housing for the young women that are about to get pregnant and have babies. And so if you are opposed to all these outsiders coming into Santa Barbara, I do love you and I appreciate your support.
Thank you. Mark.
I would reassure them that I'm going to work tirelessly to support the Santa Barbara lifestyle and at the same time embrace new growth and innovative change in the city. And that would be that I would be sensitive to our heritage and the atmosphere and the architecture in Santa Barbara at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Thanks. Like everyone else, I've been spending a lot of time out on the streets looking for votes. But I do take time to look at the architecture and the buildings with an eye to building height, because it has been a topic of conversation. So to people who are nervous about overdevelopment or buildings that are too tall, I would tell them, take a look around at buildings that are 3 stories high and look at the beautiful design. The fact that a lot of those complexes are downtown where they should be, close to public transit, walkable to jobs and commercial centers. Look at our city housing authority complexes. So we need to take a look at their relationship to the environment, the silhouette against the sky and the mountains. And I would also ask people who are worried about that, do they believe that commuting 2 or 3 hours every day is a healthy lifestyle? Is it good for air quality or reducing carbon emissions? We haven't talked about climate change today. That's real. And then I'll close by saying that I do support condominiums. People are looking for housing, home ownership opportunities too. So
Okay.
let's make our dense housing program work for that.
Okay, thank you. Randy?
Well, we've done a lot of different things. We've done every acronym in the book from AUD to ADU to FAR, whatever else, and we still haven't hit the sweet spot. And frankly, we probably won't outside of our housing authority, which is fabulous. The question is, what does success look like? We haven't ever even asked that question. And we never go to the people, we hire a new consultant, but we never go to the people that actually build these things and say, this is why we can't get this done, or this is what we could do to get this done. But people didn't move to Santa Barbara to have the urban experience. People moved to Santa Barbara and sacrificed a great deal to have the Santa Barbara experience. We need much greater data on where the jobs are, where people live, and how they get to those jobs. We haven't done that since the 80s, which is unbelievable to me. And we're still trying to have these density workforce housing questions. We need to get the facts in first, and we haven't done it for a long time.
All right, thank you. And with that, we will go to closing statements. Oh, sorry. No, I skipped James. I skipped James. I'm sorry. I looked at my sheet here. Thank you for speaking up, though.
No worries. Thank you. I would like to correct one thing that Mr. Rouse said. We have done studies, and it's been transportation studies, and we know that 16,000 people a day were prior to COVID were coming to Santa Barbara to work. And so what that tells us is we know that they can't afford to live here or can't find housing here in the city where they work. And so that's something that we need to check. But how would I respond to those who don't want to see, greater density? First by listening to them. It's not rocket science, right? Listening to them and asking the basic questions like, so why? And what are your concerns? And exploring that natural curiosity and finding out, okay, so is there a way that we can mitigate that in a reasonable way? And I think, going into those conversations with how do we get to yes instead of no and making it more contentious and divisive, I think, that yes mentality will help provide a lot greater outcomes. And then, you can always remind them of the state mandate to build more housing.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, my apologies for skipping you there almost.
No worries.
Okay, so with that, we've wrapped up our questions and we can move on to some closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak. Please keep it within that 2 minutes. And then Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay, my name is Matt Kilrain. All those vote at Matt for mayor signs around town are mine. I'm running for mayor on my 4 cornerstone agenda. First cornerstone to my 4 cornerstone agenda is to make Santa Barbara a safer place for kids to grow up. Second cornerstone of my 4 cornerstone agenda is to stop the middle class squeeze and to actually resolve the housing crunch. Third cornerstone, my 4 cornerstone agenda is to make Santa Barbara the green power capital of the world. And within this, I will give the citizens of Santa Barbara more than $1 billion of green technology, along with a multi-billion-dollar business plan to back it up. Fourth cornerstone is my Santa Barbara Economic Development and Waterfront Reformation Act. Now, there's several amendments to my 4 cornerstones. The Keystone Amendment is the amendment that will make the citizens of Santa Barbara owners of the business of Santa Barbara, and they will receive a dividend and a pension, a nice big fat pension, for living in Santa Barbara and owning the business of Santa Barbara. The Flintstone Amendment to my Four Cornerstone agenda is an anti-discrimination initiative that will stop people who use marijuana and people who refuse to get vaccinated from being discriminated out of the workforce. The Gemstone Amendment to my Four Cornerstone agenda is an initiative where I'm looking into us creating our own currency to be used among local Santa Barbarians. Now I'm coming out with a throwing stone amendment where we're going to throw all the tyrants and the gang stalkers and the predators and the criminals out of town. And that's going to open up a lot of housing for the law-abiding citizens. Now I'm trying to lead Santa Barbara into the golden age with my agenda. I'm trying to stop the divide. I'm trying to raise the vibe, and I'm trying to unite the 805. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Mark.
Yes. Santa Barbara is an architectural gem, and I believe it can sparkle even more, and that this is going to be a creative endeavor that requires a collaboration of architects, planners, artists, and the general community at large. The city needs to continue to new heights with its efforts to be green and encourage spaces that create community. And I am a strong advocate for this approach to Santa Barbara's housing issues. Please consider me for your vote for mayor.
All right, thank you. Kathy, final words?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to serve as Santa Barbara's mayor, and I ask for your vote. I'm proud to have led the charge to make Santa Barbara a more equitable and just and progressive city where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, specifically jobs and housing opportunities. People know me as a hard worker. I'll continue to do that. Enhancing the quality of life for our residents and enhancing the health of the economy and our natural environment. And I will build on all the positive relationships that I've built over the last 10 years. I just point to my record of accomplishment with tenants protections and housing affordability, initiating several climate resiliency programs and actions, helping our homeless and reducing the impacts of homelessness. That will probably be the main focus of my second term. And as I said in another response, I'm knowledgeable about homelessness. I'm the city's lead on it. I serve on the county's task force. I lead the city's efforts. And I point to our Safe Shelter program as successful, putting people into bridge housing. I'd like to highlight my endorsements. The Democratic Party of Santa Barbara County, they vetted me for my commitment to the environment, women's empowerment, gun safety, good education, access to healthcare and childcare services. I have the endorsement of the Sierra Club, the Central Coast Labor Council, Planned Parenthood, Latinas Lead California. Very, very proud of my endorsements. And I hope the good people of Santa Barbara will trust me and give me a second term to serve them and be a mayor who works hard for their benefit and their children's benefit. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted there. Randy, next up.
Yeah, well, the theme of tonight has really been about housing Santa Barbara and what we're going to do about density and quality of life. And quality of life is really the main job of local government. We have, people in Sacramento that are trying to tell us what to do. Certainly people in DC that try to tell us what to do. And we have to do what we can to retain our local control. This is what we built. This is what we sacrificed to live in. This is what we've done. And to maintain this community, we have to do things other than what we're doing today. We're doing today is scattershot. We don't have a real plan to keep State Street clean. We don't have a plan that's new and different about how to deal with our homeless population. we're trying to do the same old things and we're expecting different results. And I don't know how or why that would be considered a viable strategy, but to me, it's not. We've got to have a collaborative teamwork atmosphere in council, which is absent today. We have to have a steady staff with solid succession plans. We have all the things that right now look a little bit tenuous. And I think all that's going to take leadership. And I really hope that I can convince Santa Barbara that I'm the guy that can go forward and bring leadership back into City Hall. Because right now it's a little scattershot, as I said. It needs direction. It needs firmness. It needs confidence. And I think I can bring that to City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. James, final words?
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the organizations to bring this together, as well as my opponents for joining in yet another spirited debate this evening. And so I'd like to make an appeal. Like you've heard that absolutely we need a change in direction for our city. We're at a pivotal point for our community and our country, right? And I feel that what I offer different from my opponents is a change from the status quo. You've heard a lot of status quo approaches, folks who have been part of the past policy making in our city for the past decade, yet claiming to be able to change the direction in the future. The best predictability of what's going to happen in the future is what's happened in the past. And innovation is part of what I've done. Listening to folks is part of what I've done. My background and my lived experience, I feel are poised for this specific point of time, the next 5 years for the city of Santa Barbara. I'm the real deal. I'm not beholden to special interest. I've got a skill set that could be very helpful to leading us forward, and that leadership is key in doing that. And so what I do offer is a change from what we've had in the past, right? And providing a more inclusive and community-based approach to solving our toughest problems in the city. And so you've may have heard that my campaign slogan is a new day in a new way. And it's really about a new way of approaching our toughest challenges as a city. In doing that, I'm pleased to have the endorsements of the Santa Barbara Independent, the Montecito Journal, my former boss, State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, the Association of Raza Educators, and several many more. And so continuing to bring that more inclusive community building approach to increasing our civic pride and having a better city, I would appreciate the vote for James Joyce for mayor in order to help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Deborah Schwartz.
When I announced my candidacy for city mayor 10 months ago, I've been working 7 days a week, asking residents and small business owners to let me in to hear their personal experiences of City Hall, as well as their hopes and dreams. And they all consistently tell me that they want to be heard. They want to feel respected. They want their feedback to be incorporated into decisive results. And so it goes beyond listening, which is a word I've heard some of the other candidates mention frequently. The community doesn't just want to be listened to. They want council hearings to incorporate decisive action that make a difference for quality of life. That's what I intend to bring to the mayor's seat. I do not need on-the-job training. I'll be ready day one to lead the city and to work collaboratively with the community. I mentioned my new neighborhood office hours throughout the 6 districts. I would be honored to have the community's support, and the greatest honor I could have is the community's endorsement of me November 2nd. Thank you. Deborah Schwartz for mayor.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. On behalf of AIA of Santa Barbara and all of our sponsors and partners in this, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts with us and with the voters of Santa Barbara. I also want to thank you for your willingness to serve and to put yourself out there for the greater good. So thank you all for that. You know, we can't thank you enough. for your willingness to step up, each and every one of you. With that, I'm going to cut this off, and we've really appreciated your time today. And hopefully we've been able to help out some of the voters out there. So thank you again, and best of luck.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you.